it going, guys? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. In today's video, I've got 3 topics to cover. The first one is that there's a new Steam Deck update, and while it's small, it brings along a great feature. Second on the list, we're going to talk about how the Steam Deck has defeated the iPhone 15 Pro, the iPad Pro, and every Mac computer without even trying. And third, one of my favorite survival horror games is getting a great update and it's Steam Deck verified, so I think you should check it out. All right, let's talk about this new Steam Deck update that we just got. It's a client update for Steam, so you shouldn't have to restart your Steam Deck to actually have it implemented. So if you guys have ever interacted with the Steam Next Fest, basically what it is Valve says, hey, developers, indie developers, third-party developers, big developers, small developers, if you have a game coming out and you want to make a demo, we're going to highlight it during this little festival where you'll be able to download a bunch of free demos and try out a bunch of games to your heart's content. I gotta be honest, before the Steam Deck came out, I never really engaged with this at all, but with all the games in it mostly being indie games, that means the vast majority of them run well on the Steam Deck, so every time the Steam Next Fest comes around, I download a bunch of demos. But recently, people have noticed, specifically I think on the Steam Deck OLED, that when you download demos, the little play button that you get in SteamOS, it will be grayed out and you couldn't really do anything to fix it. Even if you went into desktop mode and launched Steam, a lot of these demos would not launch on your Steam Deck. Well, there's a new Steam Deck client update that fixes everything, so if you're someone who likes to try out game demos, not only will you be set to go for the next Fest on Steam, you'll also be good to go with demos that you can download right now. I always say this whenever we get quick little updates like this, but Valve just does a tremendous job, in my opinion, making sure that everything works on the Steam Deck. Like, even when things don't necessarily work right, they push out updates pretty damn fast, and I want them to keep that cadence going forward, which is why I always bring it up and praise them at the end of news stories like this. So yeah, if you're having trouble playing demos on your Steam Deck lately, make sure you get this client update and everything should be good to go. Anyway, that brings us to the second news story, which is that the Steam Deck has seemingly defeated Apple without even trying. So let me explain this. Essentially what's going on here is that Apple develops their own chips now for not only the iPhone, but also the iPad and Mac computers. So like the Mac that I edit all my videos on is a MacBook Air, and it has an M2 chip in it. And even though it's a fanless designed computer that only has 8 gigs of RAM, I'm able to cut through 4K footage without any problems any day of the week. Like, I edit about 6 to 7 videos a week and that computer is still working as it did the day I got it. But one thing they really started pushing with these M chips is the ability to play console quality games, not only on your MacBook, but also on your iPad Pro or your iPhone 15 Pro Max, and things are not going well. The games that have been released so far are Death Stranding, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and Resident Evil Village, so it's actually a pretty healthy amount of games, and all of them are pretty well critically reviewed. But while they are all free to download and they seem to do pretty well with these free trial versions, it turns out that really no one ever ponies up the money to actually buy these games, and I think I can explain why. Just for context, the game we're talking about specifically today is Resident Evil 7. It just came out on the iPhone, and through App Store tracking, it's been determined that only around 2,000 people out of the 85,000 people who have downloaded Resident Evil 7 on their iPhone 15 actually ended up purchasing the game outright. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that it's a dismal experience over on the iPhone. The first big reason that I think this isn't really taking off for Apple is the control situation. Obviously, you can connect an Xbox controller or a DualSense to your iPhone and use that to play these games, but if you do that, you also need some sort of clip-on attachment or a phone stand or something like that, because the idea of plugging in a DualSense and putting your iPhone 15 Pro flat down on the table in front of you, I don't need to explain why that's not a great experience. So right there, if you want to do this, you're going to spend at least $70 to get a controller for a console, but they do offer clip-on attachments like the Backbone One that then cost around $100, and those give you basically a full controller layout that turns your iPhone into essentially a little Steam Deck. I personally like the Backbone One. I talk about this on PS Ready all the time, but my main cardio workout is I have a treadmill here. I set it at a 10 incline and I just walk for around 30 to 45 minutes depending on the day. And while some people enjoy watching YouTube or watching Netflix, I like to play old games on my iPhone, so I use all these emulators emulators like Delta and PPSSPP, and I play games like God of War Chains of Olympus and Ghosts of Sparta, and it's a great experience. Over on PS Ready, people love to make fun of me for that. They're like, oh, you play games at the gym, bro? A, don't play games at the gym. I play games in my house on my treadmill. And B, if you're watching Netflix or YouTube on your treadmill, I don't feel like it's any different, right? Like I'm just using my hands instead of standing there with them at my side while I walk, and it makes the 30, 45 minutes go 10 times faster. So I don't want to hear any comments making fun of me for playing games on the treadmill, okay? And while it is a decent experience, that's really the only place I would do it. I just feel like the Steam Deck is a little too big to actually take on the treadmill, and that's why I do it on my iPhone, and it's awesome. I'm not going to complain about the experience. You're not going to get me to do it. But if you don't have a Backbone 1 attachment or anything like that, the touch control situation with these games like Resident Evil 4, it's really as bad as it can be. Like when you see the screenshot of all the controller buttons laid out, like the full DualSense basically laid out on an iPhone 15 Pro Max screen, you can't even see the game through the controls. It looks like a meme making fun of it, but it's not a meme. It's actually how it's set up. So if you take that experience and compare it to something like the Steam Deck, obviously the Steam Deck is going to come out on top in every scenario. Like we've been through this over the past couple of decades. I grew up during the iPhone being released to begin with, and then also the App Store coming out later. And when that happened, there were tons of console quality games on the iPhone, and a lot of them were pretty decent. Stuff like the Dead Space game on iPhone, that was a completely original Dead Space game. I really enjoyed it. Need for Speed Shift was another standout example. The dam really broke with Super Mario Run though. Nintendo kind of got into the whole mobile space. Like this all started when I moved to LA, so it was like 2015. They had that Mitomo app, which is like kind of like Tamagotchi life mixed with a social network, and it was kind of fun for a couple of days, but people fell off of it pretty quick. There was an Animal Crossing game that was pretty decent, but it had a lot of microtransactions. Mario Kart World Tour is another example, but Mario Run was different because it was a full-on Mario game in the style of the new Super Mario Bros. Developed for the iPhone. It wasn't free though. You could download it for free and play a few of the levels, but then it asked you to pay $10. But because of the situation that was created on the App Store where people wanted to play games for free, no one wanted to pony up the $10. So if you just oppose that against the situation we have with these games where they cost full price around $40 to $60 to play them depending on the game, if people weren't willing to pay $10, they're definitely not willing to pay full price for these games. And then finally, the performance is absolutely abysmal. I'd recommend checking out the Digital Foundry videos on the iPhone 15 Pro's performance with a lot of these games if you're curious about it at all like I was. It's like largely a 28 to 31 FPS experience. You can run it with the frame rate locked or unlocked, but you're never going to be playing at a locked 30 FPS regardless. The settings are a mix of like low, high, and medium. It just doesn't look very good, even if you're pinching it down to a screen that's this big. So yeah, when all this started happening, I would see a bunch of news stories from outlets like IGN and like people on Twitter that are on the Xbox side of the fence saying this could kill things like the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck and the PS5 even, and I just laughed because we've been through this before. Way back when I was in college, like my freshman year, they released BioShock, like the full game on iPhone, and it sold terribly. It looked awful and no one bought it because no one really wants to play full quality console games on their phone. Obviously in 5 to 10 years, if the performance catches up or something like that, or Apple starts including a controller with every iPhone, I could see more people maybe adopting the technology and trying to play games on their phone. But as it stands now, even though iPhones are expensive, I feel like if you want to play games, you're going to buy a PS5, you're going to buy a Steam Deck, you're going to buy an ROG Ally, because having a dedicated gaming device 100% of the time is better than using your phone for everything. Because at the end of the day, the battery life situation is going to be the thorn in the side of the iPhone, because if you play these full console quality games, I mean, it's going to drain your battery, right? Like even on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, the battery life is only around 2 hours playing Resident Evil 4, which I only ended up playing because Apple gave me a notification that I could pre-download the game, and I thought it would have a free trial, but when the game came out, it just went ahead and purchased it itself. So I was like, well, I accidentally bought it, and as far as I know, you can't do refunds on the App Store, so I gave it a shot, and lo and behold, it was a terrible experience across the board. So yeah, it's funny. It's like the press kind of dragged Valve into a fight that they weren't even interested in fighting by juxtaposing the iPhone against the Steam Deck, but even though they didn't respond in really any way, they managed to beat Apple in this situation without even trying, because people people don't want to buy these games on their phone. Very interesting situation from top to bottom. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is a game that I think is worth checking out on the Steam Deck, and that game is the Outlast Trials. If you're someone who loves Saw movies, you will love the Outlast Trials. Basically, it's a 4-player game where there's a bunch of Saw traps, and you can play it solo or you can play it with 3 other people, and you have to complete randomized objectives while a different killer for every level is chasing you, and they are AI controlled. So it's not like Dead by Daylight where it's 4 survivors versus 1 person killer. Like a person doesn't play the killer in the Outlast Trials. The other big difference is that the graphics are amazing. Like, another huge difference between the Outlast Trials and something like Dead by Daylight is it doesn't have to rely on established IP in movies to actually be an exciting experience. Like Dead by Daylight, I feel like is marketed through having characters like Michael Myers, Leatherface, Jason not Jason, doesn't have Jason. Dead by Daylight, I feel like it's a lot of its marketing points for having characters like Ash from The Evil Dead, Michael Myers from Halloween, Freddy from A Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, like those big classic characters. They do have a lot of their own original killers, but no one really builds a fandom around them, I would say. The Outlast Trials, on the other hand, has no licensed killers, but I really hope they do eventually get Jigsaw because that just seems like a match made in heaven. And the coolest thing is this game runs extremely well on the Steam Deck. You'll get largely a good 30 to 40 FPS out of it. I don't think it's a 60 FPS experience, but even on my main gaming PC, which does have a 4090, I feel like I have to say, I get a rock solid 60 all the time at max settings. So I'd imagine that if you really lowered the settings a lot, you could get 60 FPS. But regardless, this is a game where you can play it solo on your Steam Deck, or you can play it multiplayer because the anti-cheat works. And it's getting a new update very soon that adds in like an Italian mob boss killer, and he uses guns. Basically in the trailer, they explain it like they gave him a gun that has false rounds, but he uses teeth to make actual bullets for it. So it's actually like more of a roguelite level because you're trying to see how long you can survive with this crazy sort of like Italian mobster killer chasing you around the map, and it looks awesome. So I will be trying it out when it launches, I think next week. If you haven't played this game, it goes on sale all the time. I'm sure you could still get it on like Kingwin or G2A or something like that at a cheaper price. I know people don't like recommending that site, but like if you're someone who's penny pinching, I'm not going to judge you for using sites like that. I think the most reputable one is something like Green Man Gaming, but yeah, I like to shout out games that work well on the Steam Deck from time to time, and with this game getting new content, I feel like there was not a better time to actually give it a little bit of a shout out. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.